Welcome back to another video. Hope you're in good mood, and today we're discuss for Around the Light. Before we begin, hit the button like and subscribe to my channel, and let's go. Every story begins with a shadow. There are moments in life when silence becomes too loud, when the heart beats not from joy or fear but from an unnamed ache, longing to understand what lies beneath all the noise we call living. It is in those moments that we begin to walk, not toward something, but around something we cannot yet name. This book was born from such a silence. It is not a story of heroes or saints, but of a single human being, Ilyas, whose ordinary life cracks open under the weight of a simple question: what does it mean to truly live in the light? Through his journey across deserts, mountains, and the inner landscapes of doubt, Ilyas does not discover perfection, he discovers presence. He learns that courage does not mean the absence of fear. Peace does not mean the absence of struggle. Both are lights in motion, circling one another like stars that need the night to be seen. Around the Light is, at its heart, an exploration of what happens when one stops running away from darkness and instead learns to walk beside it. Each chapter invites you to travel not just through Ilyas's path, but through your own, the parts of you that question, fall, break, and rise again with quiet strength. This book is not meant to tell you where the light is. It is meant to remind you that you have always been walking near it. So, as you open these pages, take a breath. Let time slow down. Step into Ilyas's silence, his wonder, his trembling courage. And when you find yourself reflected somewhere between his steps and his thoughts, remember: the journey toward the light does not begin at dawn. It begins the moment you open your eyes to the dark. The silence before the light. The wind moved softly through the alleys of the old town, carrying the scent of dust, bread, and forgotten prayers. Ilyas walked without direction. The evening light fell like a quiet blessing on his face, yet he felt no warmth within. He had everything a simple life could offer: a modest home, a few loyal friends, and the familiar rhythm of his days, but lately, it all seemed hollow. The laughter of others felt distant, the color of the world fading like an old photograph. Something inside him whispered that he was missing something essential, something invisible. Every morning, he woke before dawn and watched the horizon. He didn't know why. Maybe he was waiting for a sign, or maybe he was just afraid of what silence could reveal. The stillness before sunrise often frightened him more than darkness itself, because in that silence, he could hear his thoughts echo like unanswered prayers. "Is this all there is?" he once whispered to himself. "Wake, work, eat, sleep, and call that living?" The question lingered like smoke in the air. That morning, as he sat by the window, a strange feeling stirred within him, not sadness, but a kind of ache that carried hope. For the first time in years, Ilyas didn't just watch the light rise, he felt it. The golden rays spilled over the city's rooftops, touching even the broken walls with grace. It was then that he heard it, not with his ears, but with something deeper. A voice within him, soft yet certain: walk toward the light. He looked around, startled. No one was there. The streets were empty, the call to prayer had already faded, and only the sound of pigeons broke the silence. He closed his eyes, trying to ignore it, but the words kept repeating: walk toward the light. The rest of the day passed like a dream. Every face he saw, every sound he heard, seemed to carry a message he couldn't quite understand. He found himself drawn to the edges of the city, where the noise faded and the wind spoke in secrets. By sunset, Ilyas had made a decision, though he didn't know what it meant. He would leave the familiar comfort that had become a cage, leave the world that told him who he should be, leave everything that dulled the fire within him. He packed little: a notebook, a pen, a few pieces of bread, and a photo of his mother, the one person who had ever told him, "Your heart will guide you where maps cannot." That night, as the stars rose above the silent horizon, Ilyas whispered to himself: I don't know where I'm going, but I can't stay here anymore. The wind answered in a language he did not yet understand, and for the first time in his life, Ilyas stepped into the unknown, not running from darkness but walking toward a light only his soul could see. The Desert of Shadows. The road out of the city was long and silent. Dust rose behind Ilas with every step, and the wind carried away all sound but his own breathing. The last lights of the city faded behind him, swallowed by the horizon. Ahead, nothing but the open desert, wide and endless, golden by day and silver by night. He didn't know how far he would walk, or what he was looking for. All he knew was that something in his chest urged him forward. It wasn't courage, not yet, more like desperation disguised as faith. During the first day, he walked without stopping. The sun burned his face, and the sand blinded his eyes. By evening, his feet ached, and his throat was dry. He found a small rock formation and rested there, watching the stars awaken one by one. The silence was vast, so vast that it frightened him. Every sound, every breath felt like an intrusion in a world that had forgotten humans existed. He whispered to himself, "Why did I come here? What am I doing?" The desert did not answer. It never does, at first. Instead, the silence wrapped around him, forcing him to listen to the voices he had tried to escape, the memories of failure, regret, and unspoken fears. He remembered his father's harsh words, "Dreams are for children, Ilas. The world doesn't have room for them." He remembered his own broken promises, the people he hurt, and the lies he told himself to survive. The shadows of his past gathered around him, invisible but heavy. That night, he dreamed. In the dream, he was standing in a circle of light surrounded by countless mirrors. In each mirror, he saw a version of himself, angry, sad, proud, lost. They whispered things he didn't want to hear. When he tried to run, the mirrors shattered, and the shards turned into stars. He awoke trembling. The next morning, he walked again. But something had changed. He no longer feared the silence. He began to notice things, the patterns of the sand, the way the wind moved like a song, the warmth of the light even when it hurt. He realized that the desert was not empty. It was alive, just quiet enough to reveal truth. On the fifth day, exhausted and sunburned, Ilas collapsed beneath a small, dying tree. He felt dizzy. His body begged for rest, his mind for reason. But deep inside, something bright flickered, faint but real. That's when he heard a voice. A human voice this time. A man appeared in the distance, wrapped in white robes, his face calm and unreadable. He carried no bag, no shoes, no sign of fatigue. Only a walking staff and eyes that seemed older than time. The man spoke softly. "Why do you wander, young one?" Ilas, weak and trembling, whispered, "I'm searching for the light." The man smiled, not with pity, but with understanding. "The light doesn't live at the end of your path. It walks beside you, hidden in your breath. But first, you must pass through the shadows. Not to destroy them, but to know them." Then he sat beside Ilas and gave him water. "Rest," he said. "The desert only speaks to those who are silent long enough to listen." That night, under an ocean of stars, Ilas finally cried. He didn't cry from fear or pain, but from a strange, sudden tenderness, as if the universe itself had wrapped him in its arms. The tears that fell were not of weakness but of release. The desert around him glowed faintly under the moonlight, and for a fleeting moment, he thought he saw figures of light walking among the dunes. Not ghosts, but reminders that no one truly walks alone. The stranger was gone by dawn. Only a trail of footprints remained, leading east, toward a mountain that shimmered faintly in the horizon. Ilas rose, his body sore but his spirit lighter. He followed the footprints, whispering to himself, through the shadows, toward the light. And the desert, silent as always, seemed to nod in approval. The Garden of Stillness. The mountain on the horizon took Ilas 3 days to reach. Each day the desert changed, first golden, then pale, then dark as bronze under the dying sun. When he finally reached the foot of the mountain, he found something he did not expect: green. A small valley stretched before him, silent and alive. A single stream whispered through the grass, and fig trees grew in quiet harmony beside wildflowers and smooth stones. The air was cooler here, carrying the scent of water and earth. It felt sacred, untouched by the world's noise. He drank from the stream, the water cold and sweet. As he looked around, he saw a small house built from clay and wood, half covered in vines. Smoke rose gently from its chimney. He hesitated but approached. An old woman sat outside, weaving baskets under the shade of a fig tree. Her hair was white as salt, and her eyes held the same stillness as the mountain itself. When she saw him, she didn't seem surprised. She only said, "You've come far, Ilas." He froze. "How do you know my name?" The woman smiled. "The wind told me. It speaks of all who wander with a heart that seeks." He bowed his head, feeling both humble and confused. "I've come searching for the light," he said softly. She nodded. "Then sit. You've walked enough. The next part of the journey requires no feet." For the next days, Ilas stayed in the valley. The woman, who called herself Amara, never asked him about his past, nor did she tell him much about herself. She taught by silence. Every morning, she would sit by the stream and close her eyes, listening. Hours passed, and she would not move. The first time Ilas tried, he lasted only minutes before his mind began to scream with thoughts. He told her, frustrated, "I can't do it. My thoughts won't stop." Amara smiled gently. "Then don't fight them. Watch them. Thoughts are like clouds, they pass. The sky behind them is you." That night, Ilas lay awake, thinking about her words. For the first time, he began to see that the light he sought was not somewhere out there. It was not hidden in temples, deserts, or distant stars. It was a quiet flame inside him, muffled by noise. Over time, the silence stopped being frightening. He began to hear more, the rhythm of the stream, the heartbeat of the earth, the faint music of the wind. Each sound was alive, and each carried meaning. Days became weeks. Ilas learned to tend the garden, to care for the trees, to listen to the wind instead of his fear. And in that stillness, he began to remember who he was before the noise of the world drowned him out. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the sky, Amara said, "You have learned to sit in silence, Ilas. But now comes the harder lesson, to carry silence with you into the noise." He looked at her, unsure. "You mean, I have to leave?" She nodded slowly. "Every garden is a teacher, not a home. The light you've found here is yours now, but it must walk with you. Go where the shadows return. That is where your light will be tested." Before dawn, Ilas packed his small bag. He felt sadness, but not the heavy kind. It was the sadness of gratitude, of knowing something beautiful had changed him forever. As he turned to leave, Amara gave him a small stone, carved with a single symbol, a spiral. "When you lose your way," she said, "remember that everything moves in circles. Even pain returns as wisdom." He walked until the garden was only a memory behind him. The air grew colder, and far ahead, the sound of rushing water hinted at another trial waiting. But this time, he was not afraid. He carried the silence with him, and it was light enough to walk with. The River of Mirrors. For 3 days, Ilas walked north through the changing land. The soft valley gave way to steep hills, and the air turned colder. The silence he carried still glowed within him, but it flickered, sometimes bright, sometimes faint, like a lantern fighting the wind. By the 4th day, he reached a place where the ground split open into a vast gorge. At its heart flowed a slow, silver river that shimmered even without sunlight. The sound was strange, not like running water, but like whispers. Each ripple seemed to speak, though the words were too soft to catch. Ilas knelt beside it, thirsty and curious. As he leaned over, the water's surface stilled, becoming clear as glass. He saw his reflection, but not as he was now. In the water, he looked younger, full of life and promise. His reflection smiled, but there was something wrong in its eyes. It was the smile of a man pretending. He blinked, and the image changed again, now showing a child, afraid and alone, hiding from voices that shouted behind closed doors. Then another image, a man older than himself, weary, bitter, lost in regret. The river was not showing his face. It was showing his truth. He stumbled back, shaken. "What are you?" he whispered. And the river replied, not with a sound, but with a feeling. "I am everything you hide from." Ilas sat by the river for hours, watching the reflections change, his anger, his pride, his envy, his loneliness. He had thought the desert was hard, but this was harder. There was no sun to endure, no hunger to fight, only himself. As the night came, he began to weep. The tears fell into the water, and for a moment, the reflections disappeared. The river turned completely still, like a mirror of the sky. Then a voice, familiar, gentle, echoed inside him. It was Amara's voice, or perhaps the echo of her wisdom. To know the light, you must embrace every shadow it casts. He understood then. He had spent years trying to run from pain, burying guilt beneath pride, fear beneath laughter, loneliness beneath noise. But here, under the stars, he could no longer hide. So he spoke aloud to the river, his voice trembling but firm. Yes. I was afraid. I lied. I hurt people who loved me. I turned away from myself because I thought it was easier. But no more. I accept all of it, the broken, the lost, the unworthy. As the words left his mouth, something in the air shifted. The river glowed brighter, the whispers turned into music, a sound like wind through crystal. And then he saw it. From the water, light began to rise, small at first, then growing until it surrounded him. The light didn't burn, it healed. It moved through him, washing away years of heaviness. He realized, through his tears, that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting what he had done. It was about no longer being chained by it. When morning came, the river was calm again. Ilas stood on its bank, his reflection steady and clear. He no longer saw a stranger. He saw himself, imperfect, yes, but whole. He smiled, not because all his pain was gone, but because he had learned to walk with it. He followed the river east, where the water met the sunrise. And as he walked, the words formed quietly in his heart. The light is not found by running from darkness. It is born when you dare to love what you once feared. Around the light, the path eastward led Ilas into lands where dawn lingered longer than night. The air smelled of cedar and rain, and the world seemed to shimmer as if it were made of quiet music. The river of mirrors flowed beside him for a time, then split into silver streams that disappeared into the roots of an ancient forest. He entered that forest as a different man, not fearless, but honest with his fear. Not strong, but steady. Every step he took, he carried his silence like a friend. For days he walked through trees whose trunks glowed faintly in the moonlight. Their leaves whispered words he could almost understand, not in a language of the mouth, but of the soul. Each rustle seemed to say, "You are close." He came upon a clearing. In its center rose a stone arch, covered in moss, half broken yet still standing. Beneath it lay a circle of light, a radiance so soft it didn't hurt the eyes. It pulsed gently, like the rhythm of a heart. He knew at once what it was. This was the place Amara had spoken of. The place she called the light beyond light. He stepped closer. The ground beneath him hummed. The air thickened, warm, alive, aware. When he reached the edge of the circle, he stopped. The glow wrapped around his feet, and in that instant, every memory of his journey rushed back at once. The desert wind, the silence of the mountain, the tears by the river, the faces of those he had lost and loved. Then, from within the light, he heard Amara's voice once more. "You have come far, Ilas. Tell me, what do you seek?" He closed his eyes. The answer rose from within him, gentle and true. "I seek nothing. I am only here to see." The light brightened, and in that brightness, he saw everything. Not as separate, not night and day, good and bad, joy and sorrow, but as one vast living pattern. He saw that the darkness he had feared was not the enemy of light, but its cradle. He saw himself, not as a traveler or a seeker, but as part of that pattern. A spark among countless others, each walking their own path around the same luminous center. He fell to his knees, not from weakness, but from awe. Tears rolled down his face, yet he smiled. The light did not consume him, it became him. He felt it rise through his veins, through his breath, through the quiet behind his thoughts. He understood now. To walk around the light is to realize you have always been within it. When the radiance faded, he found himself sitting on the edge of the clearing. The forest was silent again, except for the song of a single bird welcoming the dawn. The sky blushed pink and gold. He looked at his hands, the same, yet somehow not. He felt no need to return to the village, nor to run farther. The journey had never been about distance. It had been about presence. He stood, breathing the morning air. He felt both small and infinite. He felt home. As he left the forest, the light lingered behind him, but he knew it also lived ahead, within every step, every thought, every act of courage and compassion he would ever offer. That day, as he walked down the hillside toward the unknown world, he whispered to himself the final words of Amara's teaching. The path does not end where the light begins. It becomes the light. That's all folks, I hope you enjoyed in this video, and see you in the next episode. Have a nice day.